Hello, Culture Matters podcast. Today I am back. We are back to talk about 30 Days of Thought outside of the book today. So, not reading from 30 Days of Thought, but in the spirit of thoughts and reading to think, writing to develop, listening to hear what is unsaid, and speaking to let go. I want to talk about a thought I had about the word connection. And there's a handful of words that come to mind when I think about the word connection, like connected, connector, um, even connect. What does it mean to connect to someone? What does it mean to be connected? What does it mean to make a connection? How do we connect? What do we do with our connections? How do we connect to others? How connected are we? What relationship does all of that connecting and connection and connections have to do with our own connection with ourself? Does it even, does it have a connection? Does our connections with others have a connection with the connection we have with ourselves? But this word connection comes to mind. Thanksgiving just passed. I feel more connected than I've ever been to all of the above, to the people closest, to those that have been kind of gotten the lesser of me over the years, maybe have not been as connected to in the past decade, even. New connections and the spirit of friendship that blossoms very quickly. Like you feel like you've known this person for years or decades, even, or even maybe even longer than that, because the connection is so deep. So this word connection, I want to explore it in the spirit of 30 Days of Thought. So, you know, what does it mean to be connected? I think when it comes to connection, uh, something I've learned from interviewing guests on the Culture Matters podcast is I've gotten out of it what I put in. The depth of the connection. I have a degree of responsibility in that. If I choose to prepare, to put time into that conversation, to look, even just something as subtle as looking at someone's LinkedIn. What are their interests? What skills do they believe that they have? Because you share that there. Where have they worked? Where did they go to school? What did they study? What roles or titles did they have where they worked? All of that. And it's interesting. Maybe, there's a degree of curiosity that can fuel connection. But all of that information, fueled by curiosity leads to or has the capacity to lead to a connectedness, because in that conversation, I can ask better questions. I have more information that I've come across to connect the dots, as our friend of the Culture Matters podcast, Tony Capullo, would say, connecting the dots. Ideas will fly in or through me, right? In the mind, come to a realization. Oh, I know this person you need to know, or I know this thing that you should know because I did extra research and I've done my homework. So there's this. I think the connection has a relationship with how connected I am with the process. Now, does that mean that if you're listening to this, you're not interviewing people on your show or for a job or an employer, some interviewing someone to have a job at your company, whether you own it or you're employed by it, or you're interviewing a company to potentially work for. If it's not any of that, it's not a work, it's a personal thing. Do you need to put that much intention and effort into going for a cup of coffee with either an old friend or a new acquaintance? That's no, I don't think that necessarily this idea of connection in some sense maybe that degree of due diligence in a different context could actually um, have a backwards effect on connection. Like, is there a possibility that over preparedness can actually lead to a lack of presence, an overthinking? Absolutely. I think I've felt that personally, which is why I'm sharing it. There's a degree of connection that can come from just the vulnerability and showing up to a conversation, not having done research on everybody in the meeting. To anything overused, right? At any extreme, a good thing can become a bad thing. But there is the spirit of preparation, or maybe that's tied to um, intention. How intentional am I being with the people that I am connected to in my life? I've always had this thought in my mind, inescapable thought, that everyone that I ever would come across in my life, like, those are all the people that I'm ever going to know in my life. And there's got to be a finite number amount of people that I'm going to connect with, even for a second. Just the person at the nearby Wawa or Sheets or whatever, Circle K, that's checking out, that there's, hey, how are you? You hold the door for them. They're making a debut, even for like a moment in my life. There's going to be a finite amount of human beings that I'm going to come across in the entirety of my life. I don't know where that idea comes from, why I've always thought that way, and what the significance of that thought can mean. But maybe philosophically, how am I leaving people? How connected am I to people? At what degree and at what depth and at what consistency or quantity? Right? It's a quality, it's a quantity. What if it's, the ambition in me is saying it's quality and quantity? Why not more, more, more? So, in this conversation about the word connection, how connected I can be to others I think has a relationship to do with, even more so than preparedness, deeper than that, is intention, is curiosity. Then there's vulnerability, and there's transparency, and there's courage. How candorous am I going to be in the conversation? How deep are we going to go into this conversation? Um, but connection. So, let's say, is the conversation, because this is something I've always struggled with, and maybe you have too. I, if I'm not intentional, I could easily just talk like I am with you right now to myself. And in this context, I could be seen as an authority, someone with something to say. Well, of course, and also someone with nothing to say, that so they have so little to say, all they do is say. And I've been there too. But let's say someone with something to say. In this context, you're still listening to this, you find this interesting, you're getting value from this. But if it's just us just having a conversation one-on-one, what type of connection am I making if I'm just the one talking the entire time? I might as well be talking to myself. How fair is that to my counterpart, that I'm just talking to myself? I enjoy hearing myself talk. I personally enjoy following a thought, pursuing, searching for the answer. Uh, and personally, maybe you can identify this with this, um, or maybe you can't, but you can identify in other people that you view that act this way. I think out loud. Talking helps me think. Other people, talking may not help them think. It's all in their head. Um, but talking through things helps me think, helps me process. So this is this outlet, this podcast, where I'm talking to myself with you through, you can think through things through me as we're not having a conversation. You're having a conversation with yourself through this conversation I'm having. And it's you, you, using me to get to where you want to go. But if we're together in a conversation, you and me, just talking to myself and you happen to be there, well, that's not very humble. Seems like the right word. How connected am I to you? I'm more connected to me. I'm using you. That's to get to me further, furthering whatever idea or thought. And that's how is that going to build a connection between you and me? Now, then over time, I discovered that, people's autobiography, there's people's autobiography, and then there's what, like, and I'll explain what I mean by that. And then there's what they have come to know. We all have experiences that we've been through in life. And a lot of them, if you do a quick search on a LinkedIn, for example, you could see a general overview of people's oh, I thought I lost my Wi-Fi. People's autobiography, where they went to school, where they worked, what jobs they held, for how long, what titles, job descriptions, what they do now, what they did then, how long at each, and and over time, you're getting a breadth of like someone's autobiography. Yeah, having a conversation with someone to connect with them on who they are. A part of that is our autobiography. What have we experienced in life? What we believe of those experiences, why believe we believe those experiences have happened, our view of them today, what we desire in the future, what we believe about ourselves as it relates to our future selves and our present selves, what we think we have to work on, what we think we don't. Like we all have an autobiography, that's rooted in what we've experienced, where we want to go, where we are today, where we come from, all of this fascinating psychologically. Then there's also what we know, the ideas that we actually act out our life through. And not all those ideas are accessible to us. In fact, many of them aren't. And it's other people that can bring those to the forefront, other people in dialogue. I like to have personally, I enjoy the ideas, exploring ideas outside of uh outside of outside of ourselves in a sense. Like if there's a visualization, like a visualization of this would be there's me and there's you in a conversation. There's we are each other. We can get fixated on, where we've come from and where we want to go. But then there's the ideas, there's these little bubbles above us, these little like thought bubbles above us. And those are the ideas that drive us, the ones where we grasp and the ones we don't grasp. And I personally enjoy living in that world of what we grasp and we don't grasp. And without investing time in a relationship on the autobiography, I found, at least up to this point in my life, it can be hard. It's harder to explore those ideas, those thought bubbles with other people. And they either don't, aren't trusting enough of their counterpart, regardless of how trusting their counterpart is of them, of exploring those ideas. Uh, or maybe even unable and need help getting to that point, or some combination. But I guess the moral of this part of the story is to be connected, to have a connection, it's a two-way conversation. There's going to be give and take on both sides. If I run in there like a bull in a china shop and I'm just going on a million miles an hour, exploring ideas with someone, of course it's different. Someone you just met versus someone you know a long time. There's different contexts of relationships. It's there's got to be some, there's some degree of disconnection to be physically connected with someone. It's not the same as me just exploring this idea. Like I have this word I want to talk about, connection. And these other word, it's like connection is one-on-one. And that has a relationship with the connection I have myself, which is ever evolving and regressing and moving forward and going up and down like a roller coaster. And then what if our ability to be connected has to do with that connection? Our ability to be connected to others and connect others to others. I find that fascinating. If I'm connected, I have a deep connection with 10 people. I I believe, I can believe I know someone, then not know them as well as I believe I know them, of course. But let's say I really do know them. And I know, because I'm not, it's actually an advantage to not know them. Like you can know more about me than I know about me, because I'm a great degree, because I'm not hovering over me. I'm through me. I'm me. You can see me. You can hear the contradictions in my thoughts as I'm speaking. So that feedback can help me if I'm able to hear it, if I'm able to hear it and synthesize it. That information helps me reorient myself and be in a more capable formation, formation, information. You can inform me on formation, reorient me to the right way, the right path, the highest path, the best path to be better. And that's part of that's going to be a naturally manifesting outcome for me or you to get better as a consequence of communicating, communicating. It's not me to you like this. Like I don't get feedback from you in this medium. It's just I do. If I listen to this again, I can listen to myself and be challenged. But I'm still working through my own bias and my own interpretation. My own autobiography has a relationship with the information or the knowledge that I've come to gather in my life is still being synthesized through my life experience, my interpretation of that information. It's exponentially more powerful for me to learn about myself and the world through others' interpretation of myself. Comes into connection, to connected, being connected to others, to making connections, connecting others. There's another, if I know these 10 people, because I've invested the time to be prepared and curious, whatever that degree of preparation is, curious and vulnerable, and to converse and to conversate, to have a conversation and learning things. And I know these 10 people. What are the odds that I could figure out how each of them can help and serve and grow and evolve with one another? And not, let's say those 10 people don't even know one another. And they know one another through me. I become an anchor, like a lever. They're getting like it's Archimedes. Give me the lever and give me enough. What's the set quote? Give me a lever and I can move the world. Give me a lever and enough something and I can move the world. It's not coming, but leverage. I can be leverage for my connections, which builds goodwill and deepens the 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 value of me to that connection. And like, what greater sign of respect? It's such a big sign of respect to connect someone, to connect two people that can help each other, because what I'm going back to that earlier thought of everyone that I ever meet or ever come across, whether it's for a second, a look, or it's a 50-year friendship. Those are all the people that I'm ever going to know in the existence of my time and space. So if I'm introducing two people, and I've know them both, I've taken the time to know them, and I've connected with both of them. We have a connection, and I'm connecting both of them. I'm investing time and space that will never be gotten back because I'm only living once. I mean, that's the assumption here that we're living on. Like, how valuable is that? How much time could that save? How much energy could that save the other person? It's no wonder, what could they create together? It's no wonder. And think about it. If somebody does that for someone that ends up marrying someone. So, I connect two people that end up getting married. Now there's a whole, and then they have a baby. And that baby becomes the king or queen or, whatever, the progenitor of a whole empire. That one sacrifice of time and space, because to connect two people is a sacrifice. They have time and space. I'm never getting that time and space back. And not to mention, if the quality of that connection, what if it has a relationship with how connected I was to those people? Well, I'm making the argument that it does have a, so that's more time, space. That's more, and not just time and space, but mental energy. Like, and spiritual energy, um, intellectual property, thoughtfulness that's in that connection. And in some sense, what if that has a relationship with how connected I am to myself? Now, I could be blabbering on for all these minutes, just coming to some self-realization of how I, Jay Duran, now I'm talking third person. That's weird. Am connecting to myself. Anyone listening to this, is it your destiny is to be a connector? Or what, is that like another level that's accessible to everyone? Or it's someone's, fate, or is this more of a general conversation that anyone could connect with, that it's like, hey, how 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 are you making your connections? How intentional are you? How convicted are you in communicating in a way with others where you can connect with them? Because it's not just a one-to-many conversation like this podcast. It's a one-on-one conversation. How much, how am I including my counterpart? Because like, let's say I prepare for an interview, and I believe I know everything about the person. My Luciferian intellect could tell me, and I know everything about this person. And what if I'm right? If I don't, let's say, third parties observed, I'm right about all my speculations about them. But in that conversation, I never ask any questions. I just elaborate and elucidate and pontificate and blah, 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 and solve, solve, solve. Where's the room for redemption? The redemption of them. They could be more, they could be different, they could evolve, they could become. I know everything. There's no friction. There's no, there's no opening for them to ask, for them to speak, for us to have a back and forth. I'm undermining them as a human being, a human becoming. So it's so important in that connection, to connect with someone, to listen, to ask questions, to not interrupt, to slow down, to be present, to be with, to be with them, you know? And so, yeah, if I'm thinking about connection, I wanted to talk about connection today because I am connecting and attempting to connect at a higher level with others, with myself. And I see this idea of connection as a portal to understand what connecting is, how to do it, why to do it, what that is, what that means for me, you, what connections are, how do we connect, and what role that plays with community and culture and communication. God, if I use one more C word, I'm gonna give myself anxiety, agita, something. Gonna get sick, and I hope you're not. Please follow me, Jadaran underscore the Culture Man on Instagram. Happy Thanksgiving. Leave us your view on the Culture Matters podcast. I'd love your feedback on these monologues if you want me to do more or to do less. And we will see you next time on the Culture Matters podcast.